So today I'm going to talk about shooting in the midday sun. So full sun photo shoots. They are our nightmare, but they come up a lot at weddings, especially in the summer. People want to have group photos and things and portraits done in the sun. There's always the guests that tell you, oh, what great weather for photos. You must be so happy. And you're like, no, I'm praying for clouds. But, we can't always get lovely softbox type clouds. Sometimes we have to work in the bright sun. And I did a shoot this week, a sort of branding shoot. And it took place in the middle of the day, and it was the brightest, sunniest, hottest day of the year so far. And I was a bit nervous on the morning of how it would go and how it would look and how I would, take photos that looked really good in this sun. The photo shoot was for my cousin, actually. So she had come to me a few years ago for yoga photos, which we did. And this time she's doing sort of shamanic healing, which is quite exciting. So it's quite a different direction for me and for her too. And so I wanted to, do my best for her with her sort of, different direction in life. So a lot of my brand, corporate, commercial, whatever you want to call it, photo shoots come from someone I know. So that's sort of, I know this is a little bit off topic from shooting in midday sun, but this is sort of interesting, I think, that I never ever get bookings for brand photos from randoms. Never on Google, never on Facebook, never on Instagram, always someone I know or someone I know of, who knows someone I know. And that's kind of the way that it goes for a lot of these sorts of photo shoots, these branding shoots, actually. It's always who you know. So yes, it was my cousin, my lovely cousin, Elizabeth Puma. And she lives about 3 hours from me. So it was going to be pretty difficult, with COVID and everything, not being able to stay over to get, early morning, beautiful morning light. We had to basically meet up in the day. And we wanted to have enough time to get lots of photos. So it wasn't like we could just meet up at sunset and get an hour's worth of photos. We actually shot for, I think, 6 or 7 hours in the end. But also her train was coming in at midday, and actually I think it was delayed till 1 o'clock. So with all these sort of constraints, we were left with, the absolute middle of the day. We went to a country park that was kind of halfway between us-ish, because it was sort of naturey, woodlandy. It had a lake. It was very outdoorsy there. Which is what she wanted for the shoots. That's why we chose that. Last time we did Brighton because she wanted sort of urban and the beach, and a different kind of look in general. She also wanted lots of different types of photos that she could use basically year round on Instagram. So she brought a lot of different outfits, a lot of different props, and I knew I'd have to find a lot of different backgrounds as well. I wanted it to look like basically she'd gone to all sorts of different places, to, beachy places or woodland places or all sorts of different backgrounds as well. So I needed to make it work for that as well. So I had quite a task on my hands, and I will show you some pictures that we got as well from the shoot. So first of all, we were in the car park, and just outside the car park was a blossom tree. So we took some lovely pictures at this blossom tree in full sun. There was the couple sitting at a bench next to us, so we couldn't even sit stand where we wanted with this blossom tree. But we made the most of it by going low and cutting people out and getting that blossom in there. And I got her to face the sun a lot as well. So throughout the day, I pretty much got her to face the sun, like just leaning into it, basically, leaning into this sort of full midday sun thing and just putting her face into it. And I tried to use, light and shadows as best I could to make it look quite striking. And I love the full sun look, actually. I love the way it looks really, really contrasty and really bold. There was a moment in that same spot with the blossom tree where if we turned her around, there was a holly tree. And I noticed the way that the sun was hitting this holly tree. It looked really, really stark in real life, but actually in the photo it made some incredible bokeh. So even though the sun was full high in the sky, I put the sun a little bit behind her as best I could, which worked well with this holly tree that had this bokeh. And so as you can see, it got quite a soft light portrait with beautiful bokeh. So this photo is a spot that I found that was a sort of bamboo fence, and it was letting in the light, the sun, in stripes. And this was like early on in the day, about 1:30. And the sun was just coming through in these stripes, and I thought, this is really beautiful. So I got her to kneel in some nettles, because that's where the light was. The light was on the ground. It wasn't up high. So I had to get her to kneel quite low down, and she was a trooper. She went for it, and I thought the light just came out absolutely gorgeous on that. I like the way that the light sort of stripes across her face. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with the full midday sun. Then we crossed a bridge, which was a beautiful bridge. obviously still in full sun, so I told her just to walk straight forward over the bridge and look up to the sun. So basically all day I was telling her to look at the sun. So sometimes you'll see it in photos, her eyes are shut. But yes, I told her to look at the sun as she walked over the bridge. And I love the way that the bright sun and shadows really contrast in these photos over the bridge. After the bridge, we got to a little island by a river. And again, it was very, very bright. There was a bit of dappled sun. So it was something we could work with. And I actually said to her quite a few times, move until you can feel the sun on your whole face. Like, move until you can feel the sun in your eyes, because that meant her face was fully facing the sun and it could look quite striking. And I saw little sort of branches would make shadows and things like that. And I had to keep moving her ever so slightly, left, right, up, down, little ways, little tiny bits, just to get that shade, that dappled shade, just right, so it wasn't cutting across in a weird way. So yes, by the river, we took photos of her with the sort of river in the background, using the blue colour of the river, which you can't even see in real life, but it came out in photos, and her face in the sun again. Then we got her to sit by this tree. The tree looked really beautiful, and it had these lovely greens in it and the same sort of dappled sun, but it wasn't working. I turned her around to face the sun again, and I asked her to lean forward so her face was fully in the sun. And it was difficult. It was really hard. The light was really, really harsh at this point. And actually, I realised this wasn't working. It didn't look good. So I just said to her, this isn't working, and that's fine. And let's move on. It's too harsh. The light is too harsh. And actually, after all, when I took the photos back, I got them back and I saw that with a slightly different preset, it was actually the LXC Archipelago preset, it looked quite good, that harsh sun photo. So actually, sometimes it's in the editing that you can actually make something of these. You can make the light look a bit softer. Then we realised that the blue of the sky was reflecting in the water quite strikingly, and we knew she had a red dress, so we got her to put on the red dress and to play the flute, because she wanted to have the flute in the photos. And so we used that with the sun bright on her face to get some beautiful sort of blue and red sunny photos too. Then we went for a walk and we found this bridge, and it was incredibly bright outside the bridge and incredibly dark inside the bridge. And I thought, why don't we use this in some sort of silhouette way? So she's inside, just on the edge of the shadow, just on the edge of the shade, and maybe her drum is in the sun, bringing the sun through, and we can sort of silhouette her with the drum showing. And so I got her to move backwards and forwards, so she was exactly on the edge of the shade, and got her to hold up the drum, and it kind of ended up looking like the moon, which I thought was really cool. So that was a really fun way of playing with the sun, by putting her in the dark and having the sun behind. We then went around the lake and we found this jetty that from the other side I'd seen it and thought, yeah, this will be perfect for photos. It will have sparkly water from the sun, will backlight her. And as you can see from this video, she was backlit, but the sun was shining really brightly on the water and it was just impossible. I couldn't expose it at all. It was so bright. And she was completely in the dark, as you can see in the video. So I got out my flash. And I saw Todd was filming me, and I actually said to him, "Oh, don't take a picture of me using flash in the daytime."
Oh, that's all right. It's for experimenting.
But actually, it was worth a try, because even though I didn't really get anything from it, I kind of got this lovely test shot, which I really liked and I think looked really beautiful as a sort of in-between moment. So I don't think it actually worked out too badly in the end, using a flash in the middle of the day. Then we had a walk through the woods. So I really wanted to find some really cosy woods where the sun was coming through just enough, but not too much. But as you can see, the woods were really, really dense, so that was really tricky. However, we did come across this really fantastic pine tree, and it was all completely in the shade, with the sun blocked off, but it was such a bright day that the photo was still really bright, and it looked kind of wintry. So I got her to put on some wintry clothes, and I edited it a little bit cool as well, so that it would look like it was winter. And so we kind of got a few different seasons in one day. These photos we took by the lakeside, and I loved that it looked like we were in sort of a Saharan desert with the orange ground, with the beautiful blue water behind it. It looked like we were at the beach. And I also just cut off everything around her and got her to face the sun again. And there was a bit of dappled light coming through because there were trees in front of her, but it was full sun, middle of the day. And I just kind of, got her to face the sun and warmed up the photo a lot so it looked more like sunset, and just put that lovely blue water behind her for a sort of orange and blue contrasting colour. Then we came across this river and we were trying to work out how to use it, but the sun was just so harsh throughout. So I got her to climb on this tree trunk just for something a bit cool. And because of this harsh light and harsh shadows, I tried focusing on a piece of ivy in front of her. And because her dress was so sparkly, it was picking up the sun. And so it gave us some really cool bokeh. So I kept her out of focus there. And then I just kind of worked with the sun, worked with that dappled shade. I let it go. Had to just go with it. I got her to just lay there and not face the sun, not face the camera, just lay however she could, because actually the dappled sun looked quite nice. It made it look natural, it made it look a little bit otherworldly actually. So I like the dappled light here. I feel like dappled light on your face when your face is close up can look really odd. When it's further away and it's all over, I think it can work really well. I used her hat a lot as well. So I took photos with her hat down or with her hat sort of shading her eyes in quite an extreme way. I took one earlier as well where all you can see is her mouth and nose and not her eyes. So I thought, I'll work with this sun and do something creative with it. So yes, I also tipped her hat down here so you can't see her face at all, which helped with that dappled light problem. Then I got her to face the sun and move her face around so she could feel the sun on her face and in her eyes. And that's like my little trick for getting clean light on the person's face. Then we found a little blossom patch that we could kind of be blocked off from the sun. And so we sat her inside the blossom and we got this beautiful warm light. She was almost backlit by now. It was getting a bit later in the day, which was a blessing. But putting her inside the trees really helped as well, and surrounding her with trees. And then she had this sort of blanket, I think she called it a mesa, that she laid out with all these things inside, all these stones, that we took at sunset. So it's finally getting to sunset now, and we've got these beautiful photos of her, one facing away from the sun, which I thought worked really well, but then I asked her to turn her face to the sun to get a more striking and vivid photo. As it got later in the day and we got that beautiful sunset, I did some more silhouettes. I tried to get the sun coming through her drum, and I sort of backlit her with her beautiful hair and the hat and used that beautiful blue sky. And then we went into the lake. So she was up for getting in the water, which was fantastic. And this is actually my favourite photo of her getting in the lake, and it's actually out of focus. I missed focus, and for some reason this is my favourite. I love that the focus is missed. It feels otherworldly. And we also used a bit of fog in a can, which you can buy online, and we sprayed it there so you can see that there's a bit of smoke behind her for a bit of extra atmosphere. But I love this photo. So yes, we did get a beautiful sunset, and as you can see, it's a certain kind of look at sunset, and I didn't want all of the photos to have that sunset glowy look. I wanted it to look like all seasons, different countries, different places entirely, and so we had to use the whole day to be able to do that. So in conclusion, what I found best was to just lean into it and use the sun creatively. So don't try to hide away from it. Try to have darker backgrounds so that when something's in full sun, it stands out as being more striking and doesn't get blown out highlights in the background. And also using open shade, so standing someone on the edges of the shade so the light is reflected onto their face but not directly on their face. To use the light creatively, so to shine the sun through things, to backlight people as much as possible, to surround people with, nature, foliage, things like that, and to just make the most of the sun and just to be creative with it and not be afraid of it. So for example, if someone is squinting a lot and it's a creative portrait, just get them to close their eyes. Mainly I like to play with the sun and just make the most of it and have a play around basically. And here we are celebrating a successful day of photos.